be with us on today. We give praise, all praise to the Most High in the name of Christ. So all my Hebrew brothers out there, all praise to Ahia Shua by Shem Shire, Robert Watt. And we just thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule. We know there's a lot going on this weekend. We know people's minds are going in this direction and going in this direction or whatever. But we still thought that it was vital that we still come on and give you this Sabbath lesson for today. The Most High purpose and things that He tells us to do is always going to outrule everything else that's going on in the world. So, hey, we may not have a lot of you on with us today, but we pray that when you get the opportunity this week, that you'll still go in and you'll check out this message. And our job is just to preach the gospel out there. That's what we're going to do, regardless of whom or what. So, today's lesson today is going to be somewhat of a continuation of last week. But before we go into this week's lesson, we'd like to give just a brief review of some of the things that we discussed on last week. We already have put the video in there, the link for the video in there for you. But just so you can have a basis of what we're talking about today, we do want to give you somewhat of a brief review today, so you have an understanding of what we talked about last week. Last week's lesson was entitled, Knowledge of Yesterday Produces Wisdom for Tomorrow. And so on last week, the Most High led us into the scriptures telling us how important it is to have an understanding of our history as Israelites, and have an understanding of who we were prior to the fall of our people, prior to the destruction of our people, prior to us into Jacob's trouble. We're going to be talking about full detail of Jacob's trouble in the weeks to come. But it's very vital that we get an understanding of what we came from, because that will help us to adjust and to do a different approach for where we're going tomorrow. I can guarantee you this: if more of our people really truly realized what they came from, what they had, and how the Most High views them, it would change everything about what they're doing right now. It would change everything about how they were raising their children. It would change everything about the purpose and the goals and the destiny that they're seeking. And so, because we lack that as a people, because we don't have that true understanding of where we were, it keeps us from getting to where the Most High would like for us to be. So, we went through those things and we talked about how we operated, and how we operated pre-Christ and how we operated post-Christ as a people. And so we addressed those things. So we think it's vital that if you wasn't able to join us on last week, that you do take an opportunity to go back and search out and take a look at those videos. And also for the videos that we did the first 7 weeks, if you hadn't had the opportunity to check those out, we have them on my YouTube page, and you also can go to my profile page and you can find those videos there as well. All right, so this week's lesson is entitled Knowledge versus Truth. Knowledge versus truth. Now, it was vital that I believe that it was very important that we go into this, and the Most High laid this upon my heart in the last previous days, because I had a mindset to do one thing. The Most High wanted to stay with this, and so He led me last night with His Holy Spirit to go back into this and to relook at some things, and He wanted to come with knowledge versus truth. Because the problem is, when you really look at it in society, because we live in what they call the information age, when everything, because of the internet and books and education, is so readily available to people at the drop of a dime, it's the push of a button. Now, because of that, people are bringing in all sorts of information continuously in their day, and they're basing their lives off of information that they think is vital to them, especially when you're dealing with the so-called black man, the so-called African American in this country. And so, because we most of our people know that we've been lied to. We fully are aware of the fact that what they told us was wrong, but because of that, we were seeking out something and we're trying to discover something, and because all this information and what I call distractions were available, ultimately it led us away from this. How did that happen? It happened because you have a church on every corner, but because the truth and the Most High was not there, What led to it was people just becoming church versus kingdom. People thinking that they were the cursed seed of Ham versus the chosen people of the Most High. So because of all these different factors that's taking place, you see a people, even though they might have spent their entire lives in church, having no resemblance of Christ. Even though they grandmother might have went to church and their mothers then might have went to church and now they're going to church and their families all in church. But outside of that, outside of those hours between 11 and 1, or for some cases 9:30 and 12, there is no really resemblance of Christ because we're taking in a bunch of knowledge versus truth. Even when it comes down to the pastors and some of these preachers, they're in there teaching intellectually. They're in there teaching their own ideology. They're in there teaching political things and buzzwords that are connected to what they're seeing on the news. Listen, I understand that you need to know what's going on and what's relevant, but our people don't need to be hearing every Sunday about no Trump and what he's doing. That's irrelevant. That guy's playing a part. Okay, he's just doing what the people that's in charge of him are telling him to do. Us knowing and discussing that is irrelevant. We need to know what the Most High has said. We need to know these prophecies. We need to know some truth. We need to know some understanding. And so because we done took in all this different knowledge, you got guys out here that what they call the conscious movement, and they taking all this knowledge, and then you got these people that say they Egyptologists, and they taking in all this knowledge, and people going in Islam, and people going into Pan-African, and all forms of knowledge that is really not changing the people. It's just giving us information, talk points, debate, go back and forth, but it's really the answer. And so what I need you to understand before we get into the lesson is a defeated life. A defeated life is the fruit of a defeated mentality, not a lack of effort to win. I'm going to say that again. A defeated life is the fruit of a defeated mentality. It's not because we lack an effort to win. Our people want to win. Our people want to be better. Our people want better for their children. Our people want to be successful. It's because we have a defeated mentality. We think because of the color of our skin, and we think because of the country and the area that we live in, that it's already everything is set against us, when the Bible tells us that no weapon formed against us shall prosper. But because we're not coming in with that mentality and knowing who is for us, our focus is on who is against us. And so today we're going to talk about that, some of the things today. Knowledge versus truth. Now, one last thing before I get into this, before we get into the lesson. I want to read you an excerpt for something that my brother sent. Shout out to Teasy for sending me this during the week. My brother Nick sent me this picture this week that he saw on Instagram. I meant to send this to you. I forgot to send this to you. And this is, and I can see that, I can tell by this that the way this happened and the way the Most High was dealing with me the last couple of days, that this lesson that we're doing today is very vital, because this goes right along with what we're talking about. It's an excerpt from a guy by the name of Lord Macaulay, something like that. I'm probably saying his name wrong. But it's an address that he did to the British Parliament in February the 2nd, 1835. Now, you're saying, what in the world this got to do with what we're talking about today? We're talking about today's lesson is knowledge versus truth, right? So, this man was sent down there by the British government to the different countries in Africa where they were trying to, what they call colonize, and we all know that is to destroy and genocide. We know that's what it is. They picked it up and called it colonization, but it's really to rob and to commit genocide against our people. But we have been told for hundreds of years that our people were savages and that they just like monkeys and swinging through trees, and you hear some of our ignorant people like say stuff like, thank God that the Europeans came and got us, because they would never came and got us. We'd have been savages. We would have never knew Christ, and we would never knew anything, right? And so many of our people believe that. There's actually a show, the Carmichael Show, that comes on NBC, I think and it's going to probably air this if it hasn't already aired, where David Allen Greer character makes a statement like that. I'm talking about in 2017, where he says, if they wouldn't have came and got us, then we would be some little poor kid in one of those videos where somebody's trying to send out for some food. And so because of this mentality that we have, we think that a favor was done to us to be robbed and enslaved, raped, and pillaged. It's really bad. So what does it have to do with talking about knowledge versus truth? This is an excerpt from what he said to the British Parliament, February 2nd, 1832. He says, I have traveled across the length and the depths of Africa, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. I have never seen such wealth that I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such great caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country, unless we break their very backbone of the nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage. And therefore, I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, which they said we didn't have one. That's what they said, right? We didn't have anything. He says, I propose that we replace her old and ancient educational system, her culture, for if the Africans think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation. So this is what this guy said to the British Parliament, February the 2nd, 1837. He had already made up his mind. He said, I have never seen such a people in all my life. But yet, when we watch the documentaries, and when we read the history books, they say that, they were savages, they were all like monkeys, and, they didn't know anything, and we had to come in there and give them everything. But this is what he's telling the British Parliament before they go in and kill us. So this is what is so important. Knowledge versus truth. Because when you have knowledge, it doesn't mean that it's true. But if you know truth, you're going to be all right. All right? So, grab your Bibles. And today, we're going to get some truth. And go with me to John, the 8th chapter.